Hello everyone and welcome back to another update on the Russo-Ukrainian war. This is my second update. As promised, I promised to bring you another one very soon, and we are back with the updates from the last 2 days. And I just have to say this right now, I'm gonna try and keep this as short as possible, but we have some big major updates today, that's for sure. We have big changes on the map, and we also have some pretty important news from off the battlefield. So the political stuff, and we're gonna start with that. Usually, in my last video, I did the battlefield first. But this time I'm gonna start with the political stuff because there's a lot to talk about on the battlefield. So let's just get right into it. Start with the political stuff. I'm just gonna read it off. I'm just gonna read it off to you guys right now. First important thing here: Vladimir Putin addressed the ongoing state examination of the Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline project, which aims to transport gas to China through Mongolian territory. Okay, I have some things to explain here. So here's China. Obviously, here's Russia, and Mongolia is this country right here in the middle, in this like deserty, mountainous area, it looks like. Point is, so Russia wants to build a pipeline that will carry gas from Russia to China. They're going to go through Mongolia. Now, this is okay. No, well, I will explain more, but basically, what Putin did was he went to Mongolia, and he went to Mongolia to sign this deal with them to make the pipeline, to get the pipeline approved with the Mongolian government because it has to go through their territory. Russia wants to build this pipeline because it will help reduce their reliance on trade with Europe, and it will help them actually shift away from the West to more towards the East and help boost their economy, keep it going, and all that. So that's basically what this pipeline project is all about. It's like the Nord Stream 2 project, but for China, basically. Think of it like that. Point is, it basically is going to go from here down through Mongolia and go to China. So that's basically what there is to it. Now, the problem, and what's interesting about this, Putin should not have been allowed to go to Mongolia because the ICC, International Criminal Court, placed a warrant for his arrest for war crimes in Ukraine. So this is why Putin is very limited in where he can go. He can't go to any of these. He can't just go to Berlin and meet with the president, or not president, Chancellor Schultz in Germany because he'll get arrested. They go there. If he goes there, they arrest him because the International Criminal Court says we have a warrant for his arrest. Russia already made it clear that if any country does pull that and they try to arrest Putin, Russia will do everything in its power to get him back. Although Russia makes threats like that fairly regularly, but I'm just saying Russia has made it clear they've made their stance. Do not try and pull that with us. And I'm pretty sure the Russian Supreme Court actually placed a warrant for the arrest on the ICC, but that's a whole thing that happened a long time ago. But the point is, Mongolia did not listen to that warrant. Mongolia is not a country you were thinking about a lot. It was just not a country that anybody was thinking about in this war. Like when you think of Russo-Ukrainian war, nobody cared about Mongolia. You might think about China. Always think about Russia and Ukraine. You might think about Germany, France, United States. Not Mongolia. So Mongolia is not a country that has a clear stance as being pro-Russia, pro-Ukraine, or neutral. They're just a country. They that nobody talks about. But they chose to say to allow Putin to come in, and they did not arrest him. So Putin visited Mongolia like 2 days ago or yesterday, and they did not arrest him. The visit went as if there was no warrant, and that has obviously put Mongolia in the spotlight. Like, you should have arrested him. Why didn't you? Well, we didn't want to. Mongolia's like, we didn't want to. We're okay with this deal. We're okay with having Putin here. No problem with us. So they made their stance clear. They're not going to arrest Putin. They're perfectly okay with him coming in and visiting the country. So let's move on to the next thing. There's more to it than that, but that's the whole thing. And here's another thing. The president of Mongolia accepted Putin's invitation to attend the BRICS summit, which will be held in Kazan in October. Is Kazan even on the map here? I don't even know. I'm not sure where that city is. Oh, here we go. Kazan, right there. I knew it was in Russia, but anyways. So President of Mongolia accepted Putin's invitation to attend the BRICS summit. So that's just more news for you right there. Make what you want of it. Iran to hand over ballistic missiles to Russia in the near future. So, and then there's a image here. I can't show it to you, but I might be able to take it out and put it on. I'll try, but I'm not sure. But it's just a picture showing the range of the missiles, and and I'll just show you basically with this. The missiles can reach from Crimea. Some of them can reach, to a little bit in Kherson, Zaporizhia, but some of them can reach well into Poltava, all the way over here to Cherkasy. Is that how you say it? the Cherkasky, yeah, Oblast, and then some of them can just reach all of Ukraine. Like there's just no limit. They can hit anywhere inside of Ukraine. So ballistic missiles will be handed over from Iran to Russia. That's some more important news in the near future. Some Ukrainian drones struck some Russian settlements here in the Belgorod Oblast. According to Governor Gladkov, there were no casualties. Maybe there were, maybe there weren't. But according to him, there weren't any. But three settlements, so three towns, villages, whatever, were hit, cities, anything like that. But overall, it looks like it was pretty minor, but it did happen. Lukashenko from Belarus stated that the United States achieved all of its wealth at the expense of developing countries. Make what you want of that. He says he'll say stuff like that. So there you go. Uh, okay, here you go. Stated by Putin, the current authorities in Ukraine are not interested in ending the fighting because they do not want to hold presidential elections. That's obviously something a bit interesting there. So, is there truth to that? Maybe not. Probably not. But he is pointing out the fact that Ukraine canceled its elections, which was a didn't look too good. It didn't look too good to the world. Putin still had his elections, even though a lot of people don't trust those elections, but he still had them. Zelensky said no elections. I'm staying president until the war's over. So obviously that doesn't look very good. He's like, that means effectively, ever since I can't remember what day it was, but whatever day his presidency should have ended this year, every day after that, he stayed in power. Technically he's in there illegally. Zelensky is technically the illegal ruler of Ukraine at this moment because he refused to hold the elections. So that's again a whole story that I simply wasn't here. I was not making videos on this when that happened. I would have loved to have more about that. I might make a special video talking just about that in the future, but there's more to it than that. You guys probably already know the story, but Putin pointed that out today. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine codified and approved for delivery a deep modernization of the BTR-60. I'm not even going to try and say that. It's KHORUNZHY armored personnel carriers. So BTR-60 something armored personnel carriers were approved for delivery. Taiwan's president, this is interesting, Taiwan's president has suggested that China try to take back territories currently controlled by Russia instead of claiming the island, which is de facto independent. So, okay, there's a lot to talk about in this episode, in this video, but I'm going to try and get through all of it. But, okay, basically, here's Taiwan, here's China, and there's tensions rising here, too, that China's going to invade Taiwan. Taiwan technically is not a country. They don't call themselves Taiwan for one. We have it's actually two Chinas, and one of them is the real China, but we haven't really decided which one's which. The United States does not recognize Taiwan as independent, and most countries in the world, like almost every country in the world, does not recognize Taiwan as a country. Only like a few countries in like South America recognize Taiwan as being its own country. And that's because if you a little bit of history here, the Chinese Civil War happened, the communists took over the mainland China, and the nationalists, Chiang Kai-shek's government, fled to Taiwan, and the Chinese communists on the mainland never crossed over to retake this area. So technically, this area is still part of China, and it's the old government versus the new government, and it's like the Civil War never ended, even though it kind of did, but there was never a peace deal saying that mainland China belongs to the communist and Taiwan belongs to the nationalist. It never happened. But in the United States signed an agreement with the Chinese saying that we recognize that there is just one China. There is not a Taiwan and a China or a nationalist China and a communist China. There's just one China, but it's up to you two, the nationalist and the communist, to figure out which one is which. Or sorry, to figure out which one is the real China, which basically means you guys need to figure out who's China, and that's it. There's no Taiwan. Taiwan's not its own country, basically. So who's gonna rejoin who, basically? And it never happened. Taiwan still is under the control of the old Chiang Kai-shek government and running as its own country, even though it still claims control. It claims that. Here's what's interesting: China is probably gearing up, ready to invade Taiwan at some point. But Taiwan refuses. Taiwan has never declared independence, because they still say that they're the rightful government and they should be in, so Taiwan should be in control of all of China. That's why they won't declare independence. They will not declare independence because they still say that we're China. We deserve to have control of all of this plus Taiwan. While China, the communist China, is saying we already have control of all this. Give us this too. So it's a whole thing. So the Taiwanese leader is saying that, hey, how about is maybe hey China or big China, communist China, stop trying to retake us and maybe start trying to retake this territory up here that belongs to Russia. This area, see this right here, this little strip that connects Russia to North Korea right here with this little small border right here. Hey, maybe stop trying to do or attack us and start. Maybe you should go after Russia and take back this territory. So he's kind of, is that going to happen? No, not anytime soon, that's for sure. But not for like another maybe 20 years from now it'll happen. But as of right now, that's nothing's going to come of that. But he's obviously just trying to like say, hey, China, you're so mad that you don't have control of us. Well, you lost this up here too. Why don't you go retake that instead first? So there you go. So that's just a little bit some news there. The Polish foreign minister Radoslaw Sikorski said that Poland and other countries bordering Ukraine are obliged to shoot down Russian missiles before they enter their airspace. Okay, so Poland just a few days ago said that they were not going to shoot down missiles for Ukraine. If there's missiles flying like over this part of Ukraine, Poland's not going to launch missiles, air defense missiles out of like I don't know, Sanok and shoot down the missiles for Ukraine. But the foreign minister is basically saying that hey, we can shoot down missiles before they enter our airspace because we don't want to wait for us to be attacked. Basically, if there's missiles flying like right here, we'll shoot them down because they're so close to our airspace. Not really sure if you can really call that as right or legal or whatever. He's obviously trying to say, hey, if these missiles get into Western Ukraine, we'll shoot them down. Will they? Probably not. Just saying, but he did say that. Dick Schoof, the newly elected Prime Minister of the Netherlands, arrived in an unannounced visit to Ukraine. Some news right there. Okay, that's all. So now for the battlefield stuff. I don't even know what I'm going to title this video because there is just so much stuff that happened today. But let's start with up here in the Kursk. We'll just work our way down. So in the Kursk Oblast, we do have some pretty decently sized Ukrainian gains here. We see Ukraine captured 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 villages. It looks like they took control of. The Russian forces regained a little piece of the R200 road or highway right here, and Ukraine captured this tree line right here. So it looks like the Ukrainians are trying to regain their momentum. They've lost their momentum in the Koronevo area. They've lost momentum in the what is it, Rilsk direction as well, which is also partly the Koronevo direction. The Ukrainian forces have somewhat, although we do have some gains here as of recently, the Ukrainian forces have somewhat lost their momentum here in the southern front. And the Russian forces are starting to push back. The Ukrainian forces at one point were way over here. The Russian forces pushed them back. So it's a stalemate. And in most places, probably the Ukrainian forces must have found a weak spot here. So they hit that weak spot and trying to push the front back. They're also possibly trying to level the front line. Because you can see here, it went way down like this. And then up like that. So this can help them try to even the front line out a little bit more, making it easier to defend themselves. And other than that, these other gains are just kind of small, like little forest patches and a piece of road. But there you go, there's some changes there. I'm moving a little bit quickly just because I don't want this video to be 100 minutes long. We have absolutely nothing from the Kharkiv Oblast, no changes. This has been pretty much static for so long now. It's almost kind of been forgotten about this front up here, so just not much to talk about. We do have changes on the Peshane front. Russian forces have resumed their offensive westward and are trying to reach the villages of Hluskivka and Kolesnivkivka. And if they are able to take these villages, they will reach the Oskil River and will have effectively split the Oskil front in two, with the northern part up by Kupiansk and the southern part down by Liman and Borova. So it's getting pretty real here. The Russian forces are close. So let's just see how close they are from the village. So from actually reaching the village itself, they're only 1 mile, 1.08 miles, and from the Oskil River, 3.29, 3.25 more like. So they're not far at all. It's getting really close. Ukraine forces, however, the Ukraine forces did have a counterattack here. So the Ukraine forces are trying to attack Russian forces from the north. We see Russian forces are advancing west and southwest at the same time, moving this way to try and get behind the Ukraine forces in Stelmakivka, and they're moving west to reach the Oskil River. But the Ukrainians hit them in the northern flank and were able to take some of these forest patches and heights by Tabievka. So if the Ukraine forces are able to continue this advance, it could potentially ruin this whole Russian gain and force them to pull all the way back to this line over here. So far though, it's only one advance. We'll have to see what happens. If the Ukraine forces are able to retake Tabievka though, the Russian forces trying to advance west will be in trouble, and they'll have to double back, probably to try and have to push the Ukrainians back again. And if they're not able to, they'll either have to stop their offensive and just kind of dig in, and then try again later, or pull out. So this is an important Ukraine counterattack that could ruin their offensive if it continues. Nothing else from here. We have a little, just a small advance. The Russian forces captured this tree line by Makievka. Not much to talk about there. Just a little tree line gain. Those happen a lot in this war. We have some advances on the Bilahorivka front. Bilahorivka up here in the northern part, Russian forces were able to take this line of roads right here. Not much there. Other than that, there really are no changes. Bilahorivka is mostly under Russian control already, but other than that, the Ukrainians are still trying to hold out and prevent Russia from gaining full control over the Luhansk Oblast. The Russian forces still have to capture a large part of the Luhansk Oblast in the Serebryansky Forest right here, which they used to, but then they lost it. So the Russian forces are obviously trying to retake this as well, but the Serebryansky Forest has been just a pardon my language, has been a hellhole in this war. It has just not changed for 2 years at this point. And it's like, and it's not going to change anytime soon. The only way I can see the Russian forces kicking the Ukrainians out of the Serebryansky Forest, whoa, sorry about that, is if they can somehow get around it, like take Liman, move in from the south, take Seversk, and then force the Ukrainians to pull out. But at the same time, this forest patch, look at how this forest patch works. It literally goes all the way around in like a straight line. So it's kind of splits Ukraine, this whole area, in half, from up here down here. But that's just something I wanted to point out. We do have more changes, however. The Ukraine forces have been able to recapture Ivano-Darivka. The Russian forces were able to capture it, but then they pulled out of it. It was in the gray zone. Now the Ukrainians have actually moved in and have secured Ivano-Darivka. At the same time, however, the Russian forces have been able to take the town of Vimka, which is now, if they are able, it looks like the Russian forces might be pulling the same move that they pulled down in Pokrovsk, moving along I believe this is a rail line. Yeah, this rail line, and that's going to lead them straight to Seversk. And the Russian forces, at the same time, have advanced along this other railway over here in Perezhina, and have taken pretty decent sized chunk of the town. And the Russian forces continue this. There's just one village between them and Seversk. And they take this one. There's this one, and then Seversk. So they'll move along what's gonna happen here is they're probably gonna move along this railway, taking the villages as they go, move along this one, and as they get closer together, the Ukrainians will have to abandon all these fields over here, and once they do that, then Seversk will be right here. The Russian forces will be right here, and then they'll just push into Seversk. So that's probably what's going to happen. Seversk, it does look like there is actually a Russian effort on Seversk at this moment, because we have Russian gains here, here, and here, and this is a front that's been pretty stacked. So the fact that we have pretty decently sized and consistent Russian gains on this front, so that there is now starting to become an effort to take Seversk. It probably hasn't or that's not the right word, materialized just yet, but it's starting to happen. Russian forces are starting to put pressure on that front. We have gains in Chasiv Yar. Russian forces were able to fully secure this first area of the city, crossing the canal. They've also pushed into western Kalinia by just a little bit. They've captured this area here and advanced into this eastern central part of the city, I would say. It's mostly just suburban area, but this area is so heavily fortified that this is a pretty impressive advance for the Russians. If they can keep it up, it would only take them a couple of weeks to take the city, although that probably simply will not happen. But the Russian forces are certainly going to keep it up, and this advance shows how the Russian forces are still have their efforts on this city, even though they've been more focused elsewhere. They still are focused on this city nevertheless. All right, now we start getting to the big stuff. Starting off in the Toretsk front, Russian forces have completely captured the town of Druzhba. They've also pushed further into Toretsk itself by crossing through the forestry and capturing this couple buildings right here. They're trying to surround the prison. It looks like trying to surround the prison. I believe this is the prison. And if they can do that, force Ukraine to get out of it, and they'll have to fall back onto the next big complex, which is this high-rise building area right here in the central Toretsk. And with the Russian forces capturing Druzhba, the Russian forces have now captured 4 out of 7 of the large some city/town conglomerate of the Toretsk, New York conglomerate. The only ones left that Ukraine still have forces in are Skrbekhinivka, obviously Toretsk itself, and Petrivka. Russian forces have managed to capture they have managed to fully capture New York, Zalizhne, Pivizhne, and now Druzhba, Toretsk, and these two are the only ones remaining. If Russian forces can capture that, then that's going to be it for pretty much central Donetsk. There is nothing, no large conglomerate of cities at all in central Donetsk after that. And then I'll talk more about in the next video because there's just so many advances in today that I have to. You guys can already look at. Let me look at this stuff. So looking at it here, the Ukraine forces have begun to abandon their positions around Donetsk city and Krasnohorivka and Storomykolivka, and they've begun to pull out because they have to. Russian forces are continuing their advance southward. They've captured Dolanivka, they've entered Lizivka, and they've entered Zeleny Pershe. And as Russian forces continue up, they are only from their edge positions, they are only 3.779 miles from reaching the Ukrainian positions or around this. If they reach this river, then this whole area will be encircled. And the Ukrainian forces simply cannot let that happen. So the Ukrainian forces have begun to abandon. They've pulled out of Novelski. They've begun to abandon their positions here. They might not fully pull out of Krasnohorivka. They might try to hold on to their positions in Krasnohorivka, and they'll try to hold on to something like this. Like they'll move, like it'll go up here and then along the river. But the Ukrainian forces will probably at the end of the day be forced to give up all of Krasnohorivka, this northern area, and fall back onto a line back here around Ukrainsky down to Otrivka and then to Kurakova. So Ukrainian forces are going to lose all this big open field area and then these eastern villages up until they reach this line right here. And we can see here how big the gray zone is right here, which means the Russian forces are probably going to continue their advance. And tomorrow we'll see the Russian forces capture this, then this, then this, and it'll be like day after day of Russian advances. So Russian forces have captured Novelski and captured this large chunk of area. That's 6.66 square miles. That's a lot. That's a big chunk of territory. So, and they've also advanced further in Seladove. Russian forces are now coming extremely close to breaking the last line of large urban defense areas before Pokrovsk itself, because we can see here it was Hrodivka, it was Novodorivka, and it was Seladove. Novodorivka has already fallen. Hrodivka has basically fallen. There's like nothing hard. There's like 2% of it left in Ukrainian control, and Seladove is rapidly falling under Russian control. And once it falls, then it's just going to be open ground. It's little fields, little towns, all the way up until Pokrovsk, Mirograd, Mykolaiivka. And I should point out, we haven't actually seen the Russian forces advancing on this part of the front up here, which is kind of surprising. It looks like the Russian forces have actually diverted their efforts away from Pokrovsk towards this southern area. And I believe the Russians did that possibly because the Ukrainians were sending whatever reserves they had to cover this northern front, that they forgot about this southern flank, and it became just open. There was like hardly anything defending it. So the Russian forces were like, well, that's open season, let's go. So they turned south and began focusing southward to cut these Ukrainian forces off and gain a bunch of basically free ground because it was so underdefended. If we look at it, the Russian forces in just a couple of days will probably have control of something like this. So zoom out, just look at this. In just a couple of days, all of that will probably be under Russian control. All of that right there will probably fall under Russian control. So we can already see how this is starting, how the Pokrovsk front, and more specifically the front south of it, is really falling. The Dove Krasnogorivka front is really falling to pieces at this point. It's in just a couple, like 2 or 3 weeks, Russian forces have gone from Zelane to all the way south of Holostinivka. And this village is a big, pretty decently sized village. A few months ago, like a year ago, we could expect the Russian forces to fight over a village of this size for like a week at least, weeks or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, even a month for a village of this size. The Russian forces took it in one day, just one day, and they've advanced to it from all the way up here in just like in like 2 or 3 weeks. So we can see here the Russian forces really have pushed their efforts into this southern direction and are trying to reach this water reservoir and the river here, as well as linking up with Maximilianivka. And then if they do that, they'll encircle and take pretty good chunk of Donetsk just like that. And when that happens, the front will be pretty even out. It'll be like a pretty even front, and they'll just go on for Pokrovsk. Is that a smart decision? No, that's the question. Is it smart for the Russians to turn their attention away from the big city to go for this less dense ground, like this open fields or whatever in the south? It's a big chunk of ground. It is. It's a lot of ground. But is it worth anywhere near as much as taking Pokrovsk? Probably not. The Germans made the same mistake in World War II when they chose to divert attention away from Moscow to help the northern and southern flanks. When all their generals were like, go for Moscow, go for Moscow, ignore that crap. So we are seeing Russian forces gain ground, that we still have to question, is this the smart decision? And it might not be. The smart decision might be to just go for Pokrovsk. But the Russian forces seem to have diverted attention away from that to gaining this ground, which is pretty underdefended. We'll see what happens, but that's what's going on here. We have it looks like the Russian forces have actually begun a true offensive in the southern Donetsk here. This area in the south of Marinka has basically not changed at all in 2 years at least. No changes at all on this front, and now suddenly we are seeing consistent Russian gains. They took Novomykhailivka, then Konstantinivka, and they just captured all these fields here, and it was pretty consistent. Now their forces have advanced beyond the road. They have now entered Vodiane. They are now fighting over the Donbasia mine, I believe that's what it's called, the Donbasia mine. And in the west, this is a big chunk of ground. We zoom out, you can see that's a really big chunk of ground right there. And they captured the village of wait, what did it say? Something that's kind of cut off, Pretsakivka, something like that. And we see the Russian forces that they'll probably from here advance westward to capture Zolota Nirva and advance north on the Novokranka. They'll advance below Novokranka, and they can capture this area. Voldar will be so isolated, Ukraine will have no choice but to give it up. And from there, these open fields will probably start to fall one by one, and the next big defense area will be this area of Usmanivka. So this will be the Ukrainian force with the fallback on this area. We can zoom out. Look, that's where it is right there. That's a big chunk of ground. Once again, Russian forces are fighting a lot smarter than they were in the past. They're advancing onto areas that are weaker and areas that if they can advance consistently will lead to in general bigger advances because Ukraine will have no choice but to pull out or be destroyed. So that's the Donetsk front right there. We have one more advance and it's pretty significant, and that's in north of Robotne. The battle for Robotne and all of its surrounding areas can now be effectively considered over because the Russian forces they lost it. The Ukrainians were advancing on the Novoprokopivka. They were all the way down here. The Ukrainian forces were all the way down here. That's that's 4 miles south of where they are right now. And that's how far they made it. And now the Russian forces just turned it all around. And this new recent advance right here just seals the deal. It's basically it's over for the Ukrainian gains that they made in the 2023 counteroffensive on this part of the front, because they started like right here. They're basically lost all of it. The Ukrainian force made it from here all the way down to here. Now they're basically back where they started. It has been totally turned around. The Russian forces have been able to fully even out the front line, basically even out the front line, except for this still a little bit of a dip, but not much of one. They've captured this part of ground and have evened out the front line significantly. The battle for Robotne and any hopes the Ukrainians had of retaking it are now basically over. So that is the end for whatever the Ukrainians were hoping to achieve in their 2023 counteroffensive. There you go. The 2023 counteroffensive now has truly resulted in absolutely nothing on this part of the front line. So with that, that's going to be your map update. That's your political update, your off the battlefield update. We have just so many major gains. By the way, I still don't. Nobody told me in my last video. I did mention it. I don't know how to like. I would love to be able to like draw arrows. Like say, oh, Weeb Union has this thing where he can like click on something. He can literally draw on his screen. He'll like draw arrows. I don't know how to do that. I don't know what he's using to do that. If anybody knows, please tell me, because I would love to be able to use that. It would make my videos a lot more interactive, if you will. I just don't know what it is. I can't figure it out. He doesn't have it linked in his descriptions. But anyways, that's going to be it for today. We have major gains today. I don't even know what I'm going to title this video, because there's just so much big stuff that happened today. But I'll figure it out. But that's going to be all for today, guys. I'll be back soon with another update. These are updates over the last 2 days, not just today. This is the last 2 days. I think I said that. But that's going to be all for today, guys. I'll see you guys next time. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hit that bell notification. Help with the channel if you want to see this continue and get better. It will if you do that. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.